Everyone was wondering how the Knicks would respond to getting embarrassed on the opening night of the NBA season. Well, turns out they just handed out an embarrassment of their own, 123-98 against the Pacers. Everything was clicking in this game. Getting into it right now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. $5 bet gets you $200 in bonus bets right now. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. And I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in the sights and sounds on YouTube. We appreciate you making this part of your daily routine. Make sure you hit that auto download function on your favorite podcast app or the notification bell on YouTube so you never miss an episode. And if you're interested in integrating Locked On Knicks into your life in another way, you can now subscribe to our daily newsletter, which will be very similar to what we talk about on the show. But maybe a slightly different perspectives here and there. So check that out wherever you get your newsletters. I'm Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site The Strickland, which you can find at thestrick.land. And the New York Knicks won 123-98 over the Pacers. And that is more like it. Let's just scrub that season opening loss against Boston out of our brains, pretend it never happened. This game felt like a lot better way to start this season and a lot better way to create a little bit of optimism here rather than the rampant amounts of pessimism that I saw based off of one game where the opposing team, tied the NBA three-point record in the opening game of the season. So the Knicks and Pacers, just to sort of give the overall takeaway of this game, they kind of kept in lockstep for the first quarter and change, but the Knicks they turned on the afterburners in the second quarter. I mean, they just absolutely smoked the Pacers going down the stretch of this game. It was from about midway through the second quarter when the starters got back in to then the beginning of the third quarter, they just destroyed them. It was not even close. They ballooned what was, I think, like a 10-ish point lead at halftime into almost 30 by the end of the third quarter. And then just kind of piled on to begin the fourth. And it did reach 30 points at one point, and then they end up winning by 25. It was just a absolute drubbing. Things you love to see, especially considering, started off with the division rival, but really this, started off by Boston, but this game, I think maybe a little more of a rivalry game, some more recent history there. Obviously, with the Pacers winning in 7 games in the Eastern Conference semis last year, with the Knicks losing everybody due to injury, no OG for most of that series, Brunson breaking his hand the final game, Josh Hart getting hurt the final game and change, like just not it wasn't a great representation of what this Knicks team could be at full strength. And now obviously much improved and at full strength. It did not even look like much of a contest. The offense was on point again, 52.4% from the field, 44.4% from three. They only took 29 attempts as a team from three. So still tracking a little lower than I would have expected, if I'm being completely honest. I would not be surprised if the Knicks, as the season goes on, start shooting more like 40 attempts from three per game. I think right now they're still just kind of getting comfortable. We saw a lot of the guys on the team like kind of sticking to their comfort zones, which for Brunson is kind of getting inside and cooking and going for floaters. And, he's been trying to get all the way to the rim more, which has been way more open for him, which I'll talk about in a second. But like Mikal Bridges did most of his damage on middies, which is something that he's really good at. Although ideally, like I think once this offense starts running like a well-oiled machine, you'll see him and like OG Anunoby, for example, spotting up for more threes. Cause I think that's that's their ideal, right? That's what they should be doing, is shooting more spot up threes, because that's what they're really good at. Granted, I thought that OG had a pretty solid game offensively. Josh Hart like really found his role. I'm going to talk about all these guys individually, but this was definitely like a game for the starters. Like this was the starters game. I think at one point when the score was like when the Knicks had like 93 points, I think they mentioned on on the MSG broadcast that the starters had scored 85 out of 93 points for the Knicks or something like that. So, I mean, that's crazy. But it just underscores like the starters stirred the drink in this game. Like this was their game. They wanted to all get back on track, and they certainly all did. I think they all had phenomenal games. But maybe most importantly, more so than the offense, was the defense, which was the biggest weak point in the Boston game. Like the Knicks offense was humming in that game, and they shot pretty similar to how they shot in this game in that first game. But obviously, the difference there was that Boston was just finding a million open threes, and then they got so hot from three that even when the Knicks started contesting, they the Celtics were just unstoppable then. Like it was like, well, you let us get too hot now. So I don't care if you have a hand in my face, I'm still going to make these threes. The defense in this game, I think, was really good. We might have seen a little bit of a revelation here in this one with how the Knicks are going to approach defense going forward this year, because I felt like they were a little more open to switching. I think was the main takeaway. But first things first, like they all showed way more gusto getting over screens. They did not look as apathetic with that as they did in the first game. And I'm sure that Tibbs gave him a good screaming at after that Boston game about like, why the hell aren't you guys like getting over screens? Like this is what we're paying you guys the big bucks for. Like we're expected to be a championship team now. Like you got to do this. It was I think a much different look for the Knicks, like as far as how they approach defense and how aggressive they were with getting over the screens. Now, maybe helps too that like Boston's a more talented team. It stands to reason, better screeners, better execution on those screens. Again, they're the title team for a reason. Like, but still, there was just no excusing some of the effort that the Knicks had in that first game. And in this one, completely night and day. I mean, they were just getting over everything. But even when they weren't getting over screens, they seemed more willing to make a switch. And, I think that played a part as well. Like it just made sure that nobody was getting open the way that they wanted to for the Pacers. Like, because if a good screen was set, the Knicks seemed a little more uh, okay with just going, okay, pull the switch real quick. And then they're really good about recovery as well. So like I thought Jalen Brunson did a really good job on defense even. And I mean, maybe he's one of the X factors. Like it seemed like he got I wouldn't say that he necessarily got picked on in that Boston game, but they were definitely like looking for him more, I think, than most players in that game, as far as who they wanted the primary defender to be on any given possession. And it seemed like maybe the Pacers were going that way too. They were trying to attack the point of attack with Brunson there, and he did so good. I mean, he was great at staying in front of his man. He was, active with his hands and active getting over screens. And then if there was a switch, he was pesky. There was once or twice where he had to sort of drop down a little bit and recover to his man, as he was playing two-man defense with Cat, and like did a really good job of being timely of getting back there so Cat could get back over to the center and play his defense there. I just all in all thought it was a really good effort from Brunson. I think we got what was expected out of Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby and Josh Hart, which is just, crazy whip around defense, playing passing lanes. Knicks only generated, I think, 5 steals as a team in this game, which felt low, but it seemed like they were doing a good enough job making the Pacers uncomfortable in the passing lanes and off ball and everything else to, really disrupt them a bit. So you love to see that. And maybe the most satisfying thing out of the Knicks defense being as good as it was seeing Tyrese Halliburton's final stat line, which I'll read with glee. 0 points, 5 assists, 0 of 8 shooting, 0 of 7 from 3, and a minus 23 plus minus. It's pretty sweet seeing that with him against a full strength Knicks team after he wanted to pretend that he was like prime, I don't know, Reggie Miller, Michael Jordan, whatever. Like he was a little full of himself at the end of last year's playoffs. So good to see that he got put in his place a little bit. Love to see that. But I want to talk about Jalen Brunson a little more in depth about how his offense was looking, probably mostly offense the rest of the way out, because I thought the offense was pretty amazing. So we'll talk about Jalen Brunson, Karl-Anthony Towns, Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, all those starters, and then a little shout out for Deuce at the end too. So lots more to come here on Locked On Knicks. But first, I got to let you all know about our friends at PrizePicks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. And PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy. It's my absolute favorite thing. So your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, PrizePicks keeps your lineup live, which is just so nice of them. Because especially in football, I mean, I feel like that happens all the time where you have lofty expectations for a certain player, and then one turned ankle can undo all that. I love Prize Picks. I think it's my favorite platform to play daily fantasy on, mostly because of that injury insurance. But I think that there's some really fun ways to play it. Like you could do multi-sport entries where you play. If you want to say, hey, Justin Jefferson is going to get over 83 and a half receiving yards, and Jalen Brunson is going to score over 26 and a half points. You can do that in one single entry and have something to root for in all sports across the day, which is really fun. So if you want to check it out for yourself, download the app today and use code Locked On NBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and use code Locked On NBA for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, and I'm back in to keep talking through this brilliant blowout win by the Knicks, 123-98 over the Pacers. And let's talk about Jalen Brunson first. May as well. He led the team in scoring, which is what you would expect, although 4 Knicks over 20 points in this game. So a very balanced attack. I'm sure that made Clyde very happy, who played on one of the most balanced teams in Knicks history. But Jalen Brunson, 26 points, 5 assists, 5 boards, 10 of 19 from the field, 3 of 5 from 3. I thought he was just absolutely amazing offensively, as always. And yet, what's crazy is that he could have been so much better. Like this, a few different shots go differently, and this could have very easily been like a 40-point game for Jalen Brunson. And that's even with him not taking that many shots in the grand scheme of things. Like 19 shots is not a ton for him. So, I think that the first thing, he missed his first 4 shots. So if you take that out, then he went 10 of 15 for the rest of the game, which is crazy. So it's a 67% from the field. I thought he just broke the Pacers' backs down the stretch of the game in the third and fourth quarters. Like I think he missed like 3 straight shots somewhat early in the third quarter too. And then just made I think it was like 6 in a row. And just every single one of them, it just felt like, hey, if he makes this, like this is basically an early dagger, and then he would make it, and then he would make another one, and then he would make another one, and it just kept compounding and compounding on the Pacers, and that was fantastic because I love seeing them suffer. And the open paint, I just think is really continuing to benefit Jalen Brunson. His finishing wasn't perfect in this game. I actually think if you took the grand total of it, he probably shot, depending on if it's like basketball references definition of the rim or NBA.com's definition of the rim or whatever, he probably shot like 50% at the rim in this game. Some of them were floaters that were close enough that you would maybe call it a shot at the rim. Or depending on who's scoring it, might say like, oh, that's a 3-foot floater or whatever. But I think that all in all, he could have done better, which is the scary part. I think that he could have made 5 more shots. I mean, some of them were like, all right, yeah, like once he really gets going, or once he starts finding ways to absorb a little more contact on these shots that are more open than he's used to in the paint, then I think that he could be in really good shape as far as like getting higher finishing percentages in these games. So we'll see how that progresses as the season goes on. But clearly, the open paint is making a huge difference for him. I mean, Cat is often, unless the possession is designed for him to be like posting up or something, Cat's often around the perimeter waiting for a potential 3-point shot, and that's meaning that Brunson just gets to 1v1 someone. So if you generate the mismatch to the defender that you want Brunson on, he could just cook off the dribble and just do whatever he wants against these guys. And it really showed in this game. I mean, I think that he had a really good effort as far as getting into the paint and, getting all the way there. Um, he just didn't quite finish it on some of the plays. And that I think will come over time because as the season goes on, obviously the rust will start coming off and everything else. And I think he's going to start scoring 30 plus points regularly soon and might flirt with averaging 30 points this year if he can keep getting looks at the quality that he's getting through these first couple games. I also thought that he flashed a little bit of the two-man game with Karl Towns, but it definitely still feels like a work in progress from those two. I think as that relationship grows this year, this offense is just going to keep getting better and better. But it's kind of crazy how good the offense already is when it's clear that these guys don't totally understand playing with each other just yet. Like they're not utilizing a ton of pick and roll, pick and pop between the two of them. They're sort of just operating almost independently, with Brunson sort of setting the table with the ISO game like he has in the past. Like they'll generate whatever switch they want at the beginning, and then Brunson just kind of ISOs and then can start a kick out sequence or whatever. But if they start really utilizing Cat and Brunson in a two-man game, I mean, they're going to find all new heights for this offense. And with how good everybody else is playing on offense too, I think they're going to be one of the most dangerous offenses in the league. I'm pretty sure. Um, Karl-Anthony Towns, let's talk about him real quick too. 21 points, 15 boards, 2 blocks, 5-11 field goals, 2 of 2 from 3, 9 of 10 free throws. Uh, so much to say about Cat. Like, I mean, his hook shot is just so nasty when he's utilizing it. Like he got one really early off Turner to get himself going, get his scoring going. And I thought that sort of set the tone. Like he did not look nearly as bothered as he did against the Celtics. Like I thought that even though if you looked at his numbers against the Celtics, they didn't look that bad. I thought that he really like looked more uncomfortable against them than he did against the Pacers. Like Miles Turner was not bothering him in the slightest, it seemed like. And then the rebounding I think was really good as well. Like I know that that's sort of a thing that people get on a little bit with Cat. I mean, he gets rebounds, but the gritty sort of rebounds that the Knicks are always looking for, not necessarily always his wheelhouse. He's not a huge like offensive rebounder, and yet he did that in this game. He had 4 offensive boards out of his 15 total boards. He was generating second opportunities, which the Knicks need out of that center spot. So very encouraging in that regard too. And I know like because of who the Knicks were playing, it's not like the Pacers are rebounding juggernauts or anything. Like Miles Turner is another guy that I think throughout his career has, you know, eh, taken criticism for being so big but not getting as many rebounds as he probably could. Obi Toppin, similar, like a big that doesn't get a ton of rebounds. We saw that on the Knicks. Isaiah Jackson maybe is the exception there, who's sort of a dog on the glass, but all in all, I thought it was a good rebounding game for Cat. And I hope that continues against some of the bigger bigs in the league. I mean, he'll have a pretty good test, I think, on Monday against the Cavs, where it's going to be Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, who are both pretty solid rebounders. I mean, if nothing else, it's just a very large front court that should test him a little bit. So how he performs against like Jared Allen in them, I think will be a pretty good barometer for how he's feeling in that sort of offensive rebound role with the Knicks. And then I would be remiss if I didn't point out that he made 2 3-pointers and had a 3 to the dome for Melo and a shimmy after his second 3. So it seems pretty obvious that he's loving playing at MSG right now. Speaking of, Mikal Bridges, I think also is loving playing at MSG, at least based off this game. Josh Hart had a really good game as well. OG Anunoby also, and Deuce McBride, even for a slightly less involved game from him, had a really good game as well. So I want to talk about all those guys in just a moment. But first, I got to let you all know that this episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's a pretty solid deal. And if you want to find your first $5 bet, if we're keeping it NFL, I was looking through some of the lines. Denver Broncos +9.5 against the Ravens. The Broncos have been sneaky. Like, they've been not bad this year. I know the Ravens are very good, but a 9.5 point spread seems maybe a bit much. So I would possibly go for Denver plus 9.5. And then if we're gonna just take it the Knicks angle, let's see if we've got Knicks odds here. Does not look like they've put them up just yet. So yeah, that's all we got to go off right now. We can't bet the Knicks versus the Cavs, but whatever that ends up being, bet the Knicks versus the Cavs. Come on, they're back at the Garden. You know you got to do that. And especially against another team that they faced in the playoffs recently, they don't particularly like. So again, you can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. All right, and I'm back in to finish talking through this big Knicks win over the Pacers. Let's talk about Josh Hart real quick. 20 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists, 8 of 15 field goals, 1 of 6 from 3. I think this is his absolute best self in this game, minus the 3-point makes. The offensive rebounding was huge for him, much like I said it was big for Cat. Like, Josh Hart plays an equally important part there. If they're going to continue their identity of being an offensive rebounding team, then I think that he's going to need to, you know, keep getting offensive boards, keep generating second opportunities. He got 3 of his 10 rebounds were offensive rebounds in this one. I think that that's going to be one of his greatest contributions to this team this year as a starting lineup. That, like, if he remains in the starting lineup the entire year, which I feel like there's a greater chance that he does than he doesn't, then, as the nominal power forward, I guess, on in certain instances, him being that dominant of a rebounder is going to be huge. The other thing, though, that's great is, I thought that he was really good at getting defensive boards as well, and then starting the break. There were numerous times where, even if he wasn't the one sprinting all the way down, but he did do that on at least one occasion. He had one coast to coast where he just took it all the way down, went in, on the left side and finished a really nice layup. So I mean, there were, and I think he got an and one on that one as well. So lots of really good opportunities for him doing it that way. But even just if he's the guy with with the ball in his hands, like when the action turns the other way, he's really good at having his eyes up and either finding someone like a cutoff man almost, halfway through, to then kick it to the guy that's sprinting all the way down for a layup or whatever, or he's good at you know like just getting it all the way down there, making that full pass, that looking all the way down the court and getting it down to that guy. Um, in this game, I think he did more of the cutoff man thing. There was one that stood out to me in particular, which ended in a Bridges dunk where he got the rebound and then got it, I think, to Brunson at around half court. And then Brunson just gets it to Mikal Bridges, and Bridges took it all the way in, had a really nice finish. And I guess this is a nice segue to go to Mikal Bridges, who had 21 points, 5 assists, 8 of 12 field goals, 2 of 3 from 3. I'll just highlight that transition dunk first before I get into all the other great things he did. But he just had this awesome transition dunk where he just was like, "You're too short," to TJ McConnell. Use that huge, crazy wingspan that he has, and just like, it was. I know there's probably a better term for it, but the way that he approached it, it almost felt like an upper body Euro step, where he just, it was a ball fake where he just sort of brought the ball in, rocked McConnell to sleep, and then just brought it high to the point where McConnell couldn't possibly get to it anymore. And then just was like, aha, like, I think I've got you now. And then just made that final step and went up for a dunk. It was just a beautiful transition take where, a lesser player, I think, there with a TJ McConnell on them, had they not handled the ball in that way and had the wherewithal to move it in the way that Mikal did, could have potentially gotten stripped by McConnell, because that is something that he's very good at. He's a little pesky dude, and Mikal managed to finish a really great layup there. And I'll just say, like, I was feeling this way during our bold predictions episode we did with Knicks Film School, and I sort of pushed back on Gavin's one prediction about being worried about Mikal's shot. I mean, just so much for a 38% career 3-point shooter forgetting how to shoot. Like, he's figured it out. He's got it. I think that we're good. He was 2 of 3 from 3. It looks smooth. The midi looks super smooth. I mentioned that in the first game, that I felt like the mid-range shot actually was what seemed to jog his memory and get Mikal back, on track again, where he took that one midi and then was like, oh wait, like, yeah, I do know how to shoot, and this is more in rhythm, like, because a mid-range shot is generally going to be a pull-up, or like you're going to have a slight fade to it, whatever. You can't really like sit there and think through 100 steps like you do on a set shot. And it looked like that sort of unlocked things for him, and now the set shots are looking better too. So, I think he's good. I think the shot's good. Whatever hitch that was there, during the preseason doesn't seem to be there anymore, and it seems like he's just shooting fluently again, and it's going through. So I really like that. I think it's basically going to be automatic for him now. Hopefully he, puts together a nice year where he shoots 40% from three. Again, I think that would be amazing. He also busted out a nice little floater at one point in this game, which caught my eye a little bit. I liked seeing that. If that's part of his arsenal going forward, I think I don't think that he's going to have any problems scoring this year, especially because he seemed pretty comfortable just running a quick little like pick and roll action, getting to his spots that way, getting downhill and finishing inside. So love to see that. And then OG Anunoby, speaking of guys that like getting downhill, um, I think he looked more comfortable off the dribble in this game. He had 14 points, 4 boards, 6 of 12 field goals, and only 1 of 4 from 3. So did most of his damage on the inside in this game rather than from 3. His first make, he drove right into the teeth of the defense and elevated over Miles Turner, which you like to see that. I think that a big thing with OG is just his lack of control of the ball when he tries to drive too aggressively. And, he was up against a good defender there, one who could have easily blocked him, considering OG still, I think, is not looking quite as explosive around the rim so far this year, maybe just out of an abundance of caution for like his hamstrings and whatever. But, I don't think that he's going up for like big dunks quite as much now. But I mean, getting to his spots and finishing over Miles Turner, like with a nice little uh, short mid-range jumper, I guess was what the first points there were. Um, Solid. You like to see it. I also think I'm sort of starting to feel with OG that he can be decent off the dribble, but you have to treat it sort of like I used to always say this with RJ Barrett, where you have to get him going downhill for it to work. Like he's at his best when he only has to take like 3 dribbles at most with long strides from the point when he like takes a pick or whatever from the or a dribble handoff or whatever from the perimeter. I think you want to try to limit him to like 3 dribbles to get to where he needs to be. And as long as you can do that, he's good he's good with the gather, he's good with going up for a layup, he's good at trying to draw a foul. Like I think he can do all those things pretty well, and the finishing is not half bad either. Like the midi, at its best is pretty good too if he wants to pull up and take that. I just think you need to limit the amount of time where he's stuck dribbling more than 3 or 4 times. And 4 might even be a stretch. So I think as long as they do that, things could be pretty good for OG here. And I think we sort of saw that starting to build in this game, and maybe we'll start even seeing like RJ Barrett used to always run that pistol set with Mitchell Robinson. And, maybe that's something that they work like an elevated version of with Cat and OG, where OG can then, potentially kick out to Cat for a 3 if the defense collapses on him, or just have all that same space that I was talking about Brunson having now to get all the way to the rim potentially off of that set. So we'll see. But I think things are looking up for OG as well after he had kind of a rough first game on offense, and the defense, as always, was fantastic from OG. So don't feel like there needs to be too many comments on that. Although I'll just say probably his biggest highlight was getting a steal, getting out in transition, or I guess maybe the steal wasn't credited to him. I want to say it was Campaign got a hand on that ball, and then OG just ended up with it and then went out for a nice transition dunk. So that was fun. Deuce McBride, I'll just shout out last before I wrap up here. 8 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, played 20 minutes. 3 of 4 on field goals, though. So don't let the 8 points fool you. He didn't struggle at all and shot 2 of 2 from 3. Just less opportunities because this was kind of the starters game. And Tibbs, I think, did a good job of staggering the starters so that they could still be out there throughout the whole game. But Deuce, when called upon, did really good. Had a little injury scare early, but thankfully came out totally fine after that. Played for the rest of the game with no issue. So, I it's crazy to say, but 2 games in, the Knicks can't really afford to absorb another injury. So glad to see that he has no injury. His 3-point shots continuing to look like butter. He didn't get as many offensive opportunities in this one, but in his solo minutes without Brunson, it did seem like the Pacers were being really aggressive about getting the ball out of his hands, which has part to do with the fact that Deuce still just isn't like a fantastic ball handler. So they were probably trying to just generate turnovers that way. But also, I think they're scared of him scoring too. I think every team in the league should be scared of Deuce scoring off the bench this year. So I think they were giving him a little bit extra attention. The really cool moment that I'll close on here, Deuce got caught on camera talking to Huck Porty during early garbage time and basically said to him, like, hey, like, don't take these minutes lightly. I took these minutes seriously, and that's what Tibbs looks at to give you more minutes and to, potentially let you crack the rotation. So like treat these minutes like you would treat any other minutes. And I thought that was really cool. It's good to see Deuce being a leader for the younger players on the Knicks. But yeah, I think that's it. I think that's all I have to say on this game. So we'll be back Monday or Tuesday we'll be back Monday with another episode, probably previewing the game, and then Tuesday with a Cavs game recap and all kinds of good stuff next week, as always, because we're back on 5 days a week. So thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace out, everybody.